Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Moyuk Mukherjee, Assistant Professor of Pharmacology of R.G. Kar Medical College, Kolkata. In this session, we will be discussing neuromuscular blocking agents. Target audience of this class is second professional MBBS students, and after the end of this class, students will be able to describe mechanism of action of neuromuscular blocking agents, enumerate their types, know their doses, side effects, indication and contraindications. Few relevant other points will also be discussed in this session. From the name neuromuscular blocker, you can easily understand that these agents stop transmission from nerve ending to the muscle end plate. Whenever a nerve impulse reaches ending of that particular nerve, acetylcholine is released from the storage vesicle, and this acetylcholine travels from nerve to the muscle end plate and act on NM receptor, that is nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, designated by the letter NM. Similar nicotinic acetylcholine receptor is also present in ganglia and central nervous system. Those are designated by the letters NN. Whenever acetylcholine binds with this receptor, there is opening of the gate and influx of cation, leading to depolarization and muscle contraction. This has been shown schematically in the picture taken from Srivastava's textbook of pharmacology. This picture is taken from Goodman-Gilman's textbook of pharmacology. It shows NM receptors are made of 5 subunits, 2 alpha subunits and 1 each of beta, gamma and delta subunits. These receptors are present at high densities in nerve muscle junction. Acetylcholine usually binds between alpha gamma and alpha delta subunit interface. Whenever acetylcholine binds with its receptor, there is change in permeability for the cations, mostly sodium influx is seen. Neuromuscular blocking agents are mainly of two types, depolarizing blockers and non-depolarizing blockers. Non-depolarizing blockers are also known as competitive neuromuscular blocker. Depolarizing blocker, only one agent is used nowadays, that is succinylcholine. Now coming to mechanism of action of neuromuscular blocking agents. I have already mentioned there are two types of neuromuscular blockers. Competitive blockers or non-depolarizing blockers compete with acetylcholine for NM receptor and thereby blocks nerve muscle conduction. Whereas the depolarizing agent succinylcholine binds with acetylcholine receptor and acts in the same manner as acetylcholine does. Only difference is that succinylcholine persists for a longer duration at the NM receptor, thereby leading to brief period of repetitive excitation that causes fasciculation, and it is followed by flaccid paralysis. This is also known as phase 1 block, and this block persists till sodium channels of the end plate are repolarized. Succinylcholine is a short-acting depolarizing blocker. If it is used repeatedly or in infusion, then phase 1 block can be converted into phase 2 block. This phase 2 block is similar to non-depolarizing blockade, and it happens due to relative insensitivity of the acetylcholine receptor due to presence of succinylcholine for longer duration. Though it is similar to non-depolarizing block, it cannot be easily reverted by anticholinesterase agents like neostigmine. There are some other toxins that can interfere with neuromuscular transmission by interfering with acetylcholine synthesis or its release. They are usually not used clinically. Only exception is botulinum toxin. Botulinum toxin inhibits exocytotic release of acetylcholine in the nerve muscle junction. It is used in clinical condition when there is muscle spasm like ocular blepharospasm, strabismus or achalasia. Botox can be used to reduce facial wrinkling to look younger, mostly done by actors. When neuromuscular blocking agents are administered mostly intravenously, not all muscles are paralyzed simultaneously. Small, rapidly moving muscles like those present in eyes, jaw, and larynx are paralyzed first. followed by the muscles present in limb and trunk. Ultimately, intercostal muscles and diaphragm are paralyzed, and as a result, respiration ceases. Recovery occurs in reverse order. That means diaphragm is the first muscle to regain function. After administration of 10 to 30 milligram dose of succinylcholine intravenously, there is usually fasciculation mainly over chest and abdomen. This is followed by paralysis within 1 minute, and maximum effect is seen within 2 minutes. These effects of succinylcholine disappear by 5 minutes due to hydrolysis by hepatic butyrylcholinesterase. Fasciculation may lead to muscle soreness, and patient may complain pain after the procedure. Here I would like to mention one important thing. Acetylcholine acts for a brief duration, whereas succinylcholine opens the cation channel for longer duration. As a result, there is gain of sodium, calcium within the cell and loss of potassium. That can lead to rise of potassium level in the blood, and these can be life threatening, especially in patients who are undergoing operation and having succinylcholine for their muscle relaxation. Soft tissue injury increases potassium level, and this succinylcholine adds onto it. This can be life threatening. Neuromuscular blocking agents act on nicotinic receptors, and these nicotinic receptors are also present in autonomic ganglia and central nervous system. But the medications used clinically are quaternary ammonium compound, and they cannot cross blood-brain barrier. So neuromuscular blocking agents usually do not have any CNS effect. But older neuromuscular blocking agents like tubocurarine can block autonomic ganglia, leading to fall in blood pressure and tachycardia. Pancuronium also has vagolytic action that can also lead to tachycardia. Newer agents like atracurium, vecuronium, doxacurium, mivacurium or rocuronium are more selective, showing less ganglionic blockade action. Neuromuscular blocking agents are poorly absorbed from the GI tract, but their absorption is adequate from intramuscular site, though they are usually administered intravenously to have rapid onset of action. Their action is terminated by redistribution or metabolism. Both of these leads to decreased concentration of the drug at the site of action. Metabolism of atracurium is important. It is partly hydrolyzed by plasma esterase and partly by molecular rearrangement. This happens spontaneously, known as Hofmann elimination. Cis-atracurium is completely metabolized by this Hofmann elimination. So you can understand atracurium or cis-atracurium may be used in patients who have poor hepatic or renal function, so that action of these agents are not prolonged. Butyrylcholinesterase on the other hand is responsible for hydrolysis of succinylcholine. Mivacurium is only non-depolarizing agent that is also metabolized by butyrylcholinesterase. Patients who have atypical butyrylcholinesterase or poor hepatic function may develop prolonged apnea after single dose of succinylcholine. Gantacurium is ultra short acting neuromuscular blocking agent, and its action is terminated by two processes. First, rapid cysteine adduction and then slower hydrolysis. These two processes are chemical in nature and doesn't depend on hepatic or renal function. Now coming to that important point, which agent to choose for a particular procedure among all the names I have mentioned. It depends on duration of the procedure. Procedures like endotracheal intubation or endoscopy, which takes less time, in those procedures drugs having smaller T-hub are usually preferred. We also prefer those drugs having minimum cardiovascular compromising effect. Atracurium or cis-atracurium is administered in patients who have poor renal or hepatic function, because we don't want to patient remain paralyzed even after the procedure is over. Older agents have ganglionic blockade or vagal blockade action They can also cause histamine release, thereby causing bronchospasm or fall in blood pressure, tachycardia. These agents are usually not preferred, and newer agents like atracurium, mivacurium, rocuronium are preferred nowadays. Neuromuscular blocking agents are used as adjuvant in surgical anesthesia to relax skeletal muscles so that surgeon can maneuver within the abdominal cavity. They are also used to facilitate endotracheal intubation, endoscopy or bronchoscopy. These procedures can be done easily when neuromuscular blocking agents are administered along with general anesthetic agents. Patients who are on ventilator for longer duration, their chest muscle needs to be relaxed to avoid ventricular dyssynchrony. In psychiatric patients, electroconvulsive therapy is applied that can cause involuntary muscle contraction leading to fracture or joint dislocation. This can be avoided if neuromuscular blocking agents are administered prior to electroconvulsive therapy. Now I would like to give special mention about dantrolene that is used in malignant hyperthermia. Dantrolene is not a neuromuscular blocking agent, but it relaxes skeletal muscle by inhibiting calcium release from sarcoplasmic reticulum during malignant hyperthermia. It acts by inhibiting ryanodine receptor. After administration of neuromuscular blocking agents, we need to assess the patient clinically to ensure whether adequate muscular relaxation has been achieved or not, so that endotracheal intubation or other surgical procedures can be performed. To monitor that, adduction movement of the thumb is observed. Because we already discussed, smaller muscles of the airway and muscles present in jaw are relaxed first after administration of these agents. Hence, whenever there is paralysis of the adductor pollicis muscle, we can be sure that intubation can be done because smaller airway muscles are already relaxed. And whenever there is partial recovery of this adductor pollicis muscle, then we can also be sure that extubation can also be done at this point because these smaller muscles of airway have already recovered. Now coming to important drug introductions. How reversal of muscle relaxation is done. In case of non-depolarizing agent, this reversal of muscle relaxation is done by administration of anticholinesterase agents like neostigmine or edrophonium. Though these agents can also stimulate muscarinic receptor, thereby decrease heart rate, so concomitant administration of muscarinic antagonist like atropine or glycopyrrolate has to be done. From the mechanism of action, it is clear that anticholinesterase cannot reverse depolarizing neuromuscular blockade. In fact, it can enhance it. Some inhalational anesthetic agents, namely desflurane, sevoflurane, isoflurane, have post-junctional membrane stabilizing property. As a result, whenever these drugs are combined with neuromuscular blocking agents, more muscle relaxation is achieved. So we need to be cautious and reduce the dose of neuromuscular blocking agents when these inhalational anesthetics are used concomitantly. Some antibiotics like aminoglycoside, tetracycline also has neuromuscular blocking property. We need to be cautious in those cases also because patients receiving these antibiotics require lesser dose of neuromuscular blocking agents. Aminoglycoside act by inhibiting acetylcholine release from preganglionic terminal and also lesser extent by non-competitively blocking the acetylcholine receptor, whereas tetracycline produce neuromuscular blockade by chelation of calcium ion. We need to know adverse effects of these drugs as well. Whenever there is atypical butyryl cholinesterase, there can be prolonged apnea after administration of succinylcholine. Even in case of non-depolarizing blockers, if larger doses has been administered, there can be prolonged apnea even after the procedure. Due to ganglion blockade, there can be fall in blood pressure, tachycardia, even cardiovascular collapse. Histamine release is a problem with older generation drugs that can cause bronchospasm, hypotension, and excessive tracheobronchial secretion. Anaphylaxis cannot be predicted, can happen with any agent. Electrolyte imbalance is seen, particularly hyperkalemia, whenever succinylcholine is administered in a patient with soft tissue injury. Malignant hyperthermia is seen when halothane, isoflurane, or sevoflurane is combined with succinylcholine. These agents theoretically can cause malignant hyperthermia of their own as well. Problems mentioned in the previous slide can be avoided by judicious selection of drugs. Again, prolonged apnea after administration of longer-acting non-depolarizing blockers can be reversed by administration of anticholinesterase like neostigmine. Again, neostigmine can itself cause decreased heart rate by stimulation of muscarinic receptors. To counteract this, atropine or glycopyrrolate has to be administered along with neostigmine. Docuronium or vecuronium has specific chelating agent, namely sugammadex, which is a modified gamma cyclodextrin. We need to be cautious whenever we are dealing with pediatric patients because succinylcholine is not safe for routine use in pediatric patients. Again, rate of onset of neuromuscular blockade as well as clearance is faster in these patients. Atracurium is an exception. But the good point is that if the age of the child is more than 2 years, we need to administer similar dose and the drugs act for same duration compared to adults. In case of geriatric patients, the problem is opposite. Here onset of blockade is delayed as well as prolonged. On the other hand, there is decreased efficiency of neuromuscular transmission due to physiological changes with age, and most of the cases the person is already suffering from some renal or hepatic dysfunction. So we need to administer the drug judiciously and choose the drug according to their physical state. In this class, we have been discussing about neuromuscular blocking agents. These agents act on nicotinic receptors, and we have already said that nicotinic receptors are also present in ganglia. So I would like to mention about two drugs that act on ganglionic nicotinic receptors, namely trimethophan and nicotine. Trimethophan was previously used for control hypotension during surgery to reduce blood loss. It was also used in hypertensive emergency to reduce blood pressure urgently. But now better drugs are available, and nicotine can both stimulate followed by desensitize the receptors, so variable response is seen in various systems. Nicotine is only used for replacement therapy in tobacco abusers. I have used the same picture in the beginning and now I am summarizing the class. So there are two types of neuromuscular blocking agents, namely depolarizing blocker and non-depolarizing blockers. Only depolarizing agent that is used is succinylcholine. It acts like acetylcholine but for longer duration and produces fasciculation followed by flaccid paralysis. It is also called phase 1 block. If succinylcholine is administered for longer duration, then phase 1 block can be converted into phase 2 block, which is similar to non-depolarizing blockade, but that is difficult to reverse with neostigmine. Side effects can be due to ganglion blockade or histamine release. There can be decrease in blood pressure, tachycardia, increased tracheobronchial secretion. These drugs are used as adjuvant in surgical procedures or in short procedures like intubation, endoscopy, or electroconvulsive therapy. We need to choose the drug judiciously in patients suffering from asthma or hepatic or renal dysfunction. Thank you for your patient hearing.